Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 13 of the anime series Arslan Senki, or the Heroic Legend of Arslan. And this was really an intense turning point episode that I really least suspected as we were going into it. Of course, we're following along Arslan's posse, and they are getting very near to Peshawar finally. I love how we see that, Narcissus has gotten a couple steps ahead of them in the game and has actually called into action Kishward. It was really awesome seeing him in the fold and hallmarked by the eagle Azrael coming down and pecking the face of one of the Lusitanian soldiers, this entire faction of Lusitania that is after Arslan's posse and everything. Just a great hallmark to that sense of almost like a sense of homecoming, because these are characters we recognize and they are very much backing Arslan, or at least some of them, the majority of them are. There are a couple of questionable elements as we see throughout the course of this episode. And I find that absolutely compelling and interesting because at the forefront of this episode is this overbearing question once again of the lineage of Arslan as, compared to the lineage of Silver Mask, Hermes, the son of Osros and everything. And all of that was just tantamount because, of course, that Bahamut received a message from Varese before he was killed by Silver Mask, and Andragoras was taken prisoner by Silver Mask and all this kind of stuff. So, what are the ramifications of that? What were the contents of that message? And it was my speculation that this had to do with all of that, the legitimacy of the throne and the genetics of that, the lineage of that and everything. And it seemed to be weighing very heavily on Bahamut throughout the course of this episode, ever since he found out that information. He's kind of been, in a sense, spurning Varese as close as they were. Why'd you have to put this on me, is kind of what he's carrying around, But, of course, when we do catch up with Narcissus, you have Alfred, who I automatically loved her debut, as I said in my previous discussion video, talking about her character debut. And I love how she's automatically seeing her like husband and wife. And you got Elam like face palming every other second, like, what'd you do, Narcissus? What are you doing? And she explains that, well, they're not married yet, that's her wish, that's her hope, because he saved her and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of interesting, there's a playfulness, antagonistic playfulness between Elam and Alfred, and I almost have to wonder where my first suspicion was maybe this was somebody lining up to eventually end up with Arslan. Maybe there's actually something between she and Elam that's going to develop. Who knows? I love how she then sort of has a conversation with Ferengis, and of course she's comparing boob sizes, and is that what, Narcissus really wants, or that kind of thing. You can tell is what's going through her mind when she's trying to feel Ferengis out about, what kind of person Narcissus is, and where he's going to be setting his sights. And she explains about rebuilding the kingdom, and very sort of understandably, Alfred is of the mindset, well, it's just going to ensure more bureaucracy and, more bad things for sort of the little guy, And the idea of putting slavery back into motion. And Ferengis has this great response, like, you had faith in Narcissus to begin with. That's why you're so enamored with him. You're so taken aback by him. You're going to lose your faith now and think that he can't sort of try to overcome those bad qualities of a kingdom, ruling all and everything like that, and Arslan being the center focus of that. I love that Arslan comes clean very much like he did in the previous sort of what they thought was going to be a safe rest zone in a sense, and then they had the guy they had to kill because he was going to bloodlustfully murder Arslan for the Lusitanian faction and everything. But I like that Arslan is still manning up, and he's still coming clean with Kishward about, I propose to free the slaves, and I understand it's going to be a little bit more of a complex scenario than just walking in and saying, hey, you're free, there you go, make with life what you will. They have to have provisions, and they have to go into this with forethought, and Arslan has come to really appreciate that and has matured, and that's something Kishward automatically says right from the get-go. He is a very congenital young man, and he has all of these things going on in his mind. He has that intelligence, that intellect, and maybe more compassion than we have thus seen with the leaders of this particular kingdom and its opposing factions and such like that. And as I say, the sort of circling factor is Bahamut and his knowledge, because, of course, when they're talking about mustering troops to go against Lusitania and take back Ecbatana, he is the one factor that is reluctant. He's the one factor who's not sure what he wants to do. He's kind of skirting and hedging his bets, and he's like, well, I don't know if we should do anything. We should take some time, think this through. It's because he has that other amount of information to do with Silver Mask and his lineage as Hermes, the son of Osros. And I was almost wondering, I was fearing maybe Bahamut was going to turn out to be, I guess you could say, a villain of sorts. And I was happy to see that wasn't the case at all. Because when you have Arslan sort of off on his own in this episode for a little while there, and he's really mulling all of these, aesthetics over in his mind, of course, we see he is approached by Silver Mask. Silver Mask ends up getting inside the walls of Peshawar, much in a similar fashion to how Narcissus and Daryun had got back into Ecbatana and just barely got out of there with the skin of their teeth and everything. We have Silver Mask operating, I almost have to say, either he's really, really smart or he's really, really stupid for him to come in alone. And supposedly they have the entirety of Peshawar surrounded and whatever like that, so I guess he has that confidence. But he's kind of still flying impetuously, at the seat of his pants. He just wants to go after Arslan, and he's not really thinking ahead, or at least that's the impression I get. By this encounter where he, you have Arslan having but to draw his sword, and Silver Mask is threatening, I'm going to cut off your right hand. I'm not going to kill you straight away. First, I'm going to cut off your right hand. Then I'm going to cut off your left the next time we meet. And then I'm going to cut off a leg, and I'm going to make you suffer the way I had to suffer and all this stuff. And, of course, you see intervening on this all of Arslan's posse. Ferengis first, but then Narcissus is there, Daryun is there, even Kishward is there, and I love that whole twin blade general aesthetic. He's coming in like Darth Maul or whatever, with two swords in hand about to take down Silver Mask. And there's that awesome moment, almost like Martian Manhunter out of DC Comics, where Arslan drops his sword, it's knocked from his hand, and he has to grab a torch, and he's flailing the torch in front of him to ward Silver Mask off. And Silver Mask is actually recoiling. He's freaked out by the fire because of those scars in childhood that he received at the hands of the fire that apparently claimed his father's life, even though his father was sickly, very poorly in bed and everything. And this is where everything basically comes to fruition, where it all comes to light. His lineage, his being the son, Hermes, the son of Osros, and the, so-calledly rightful heir to the throne. Arslan is like dumbstruck. They're all dumbstruck. You can see Daryun, like, when Bahamut gets on the scene and actually gets in the way. This is why I say I was actually glad to see he wasn't sort of a villainous character, because he's still very honorable. He still did the honorable thing and kept to his promise to help try to save and protect Arslan's life. He got in the way of Silver Mask diving toward him with the sword, trying to kill Arslan, and effectively Bahamut took the blow. And in his dying, blood-curdling breaths, he lets it be known. All of this, is now hanging in the breeze for all to contemplate, that Silver Mask was the son of Osros, that they are somehow related. Maybe there's more information in that message pertaining to, maybe instead of cousins, Arslan and, Silver Mask Hermes are brothers, perchance, something along those lines, remains to be seen. But the point being, Bahamut is keeping to his promise to Varese, and we see that Bahamut was very much the Varese to Silver Mask as Varese was to Arslan, training the young son of the king, the prince, and all this stuff. They are very cut from the same cloth, that is to say, Hermes and, Arslan. And as we see in those dying moments, Bahamut grabs onto Daryun's cape to halt him from going after Silver Mask Hermes because of how much he cares for him. He's Bahamut is able to still be honorable, to still be forthright, to still do the right thing, and yet because of his care and concern for the young boy that was Hermes, the young boy he remembers, that he brought up, he's still able to also try to protect his life. And it was just amazing for that. You know, once you're sort of done with this aspect, Bahamut dies and Arslan screams his name. He's frustrated. He now has all of this revelation hanging in the breeze to contemplate, as I say. All of these characters do. They don't even get over that WTF before all of a sudden they have some of the Peshawar guards coming up and being like, maybe you might want to take notice outside. We have this whole Sindarin force trying to encroach upon Peshawar now. Oops, we didn't realize, you know, sorry to interrupt your, you know, soap opera life that's going on here. And they sort of close in on one guy in particular who's talking about, you know, it's going to be me who etches his name onto history and not the other guy, whatever it is. I don't know who this character is in the end, but I mean, just everything that happened and unfolded and all the revelations coming to light, I felt like, oh yes, it's about freaking time. We get all of these things out in the open, and there's still enough left to question that, you know, it can prolong the story and keep me intrigued to see how it's all going to unfold, whether or not it proves that Arslan is the brother of Hermes, or whether they are still actually cousins, who the parentage of Arslan is, because again we call back on the fact that he was for a time as a youth outside the kingdom, and then one day he was brought in and he didn't even know he was a prince. He just sort of found out, you know, after so long, and I find that very intriguing. Like, perhaps he isn't of royal lineage, but as I've had in conversations with a few of you folks in the comments, as well as over on Facebook and such like that, who've been following the series and my videos talking about the series, it almost doesn't matter. You know, Arslan's rightful heirship to the throne doesn't matter at all, because he is the most righteous and benevolent, the most caring and compassionate factor. We're all championing for him to actually be the leadership of this whole kingdom, you know. It doesn't really matter whether he has lineage rights to it or not. He would be the most beneficial. He would be the most, you know, sort of the impetus for change in a good way, in the entirety of this kingdom, in the entirety of the peaceful nations coming together. And that's why we champion him. You know, he has this sort of innocence and naivete, but he is learning and he's maturing, as we've seen in this episode in particular. And I mean, for him to draw his own sword and try to take on Silver Mask, he has a confidence in the face of fear. You know, you can still be fearful, but as long as you man up and you confront it, which is what Arslan did, this is thorough proof of his, you know, evolution, that he is growing, he is learning, he's becoming stronger and more confident. And for a time, it was like everyone was holding him back, and now he's having more and more chances. Just look at his confrontation with Giv in this episode. Giv is sort of bemoaning the fact, you know, he has the hots for Ferengis, but apparently she maybe is with Daryun, or at least that's his, you know, sort of idea on the entire matchup and everything. And he's like, even Narcissus comes back with a woman, what am I doing wrong, you know, and everything. And Arslan is like apologetic toward him, like, I hadn't considered your own thoughts and your own well-being and how this is going to affect you and what you want out of the scenario. And again, he's making promises, you know, should we succeed, this is what you're going to get out of it, because you have been there for me. And it's just an absolutely fascinating journey so far. So that's all I have to say on this particular episode. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below if you were as astounded by all of the revelations finally coming to light and the reactions and the idea that from this point on, everyone has this to mull over. It's going to be interesting to see who still retains a loyalty to Arslan and who may not, you know, what particular forces are going to get in the way between the Lusitanian faction and the Parsian faction that Arslan represents, and whether there are going to be elders yet in the hierarchy of this systematic government, this kingdom-laden government, you know, that try to oppose and get in the way, as, you know, Kishwar basically warned Arslan would potentially happen, especially in that Arslan wants to free slaves and all these other things. And as I say, it's going to be hella interesting to see how this all comes together and plays out through the course of this, you know, story unfolding. And as always, I love having the conversation with you guys. So otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.